Page 48, Piano Sonata number 15 in D major, Opus 28, also known as the Pastoral. 3/4 time, 2 sharps. I think we're in the key of D major. Start with the right hand. At the beginning, D. Now, I would just assume, you keep in mind this is a fast piece, so the fingering we use has to work on a fast speed. I would prefer to do a 2-1-2. And then a 1-4-5 here, and then come up. You can get away with 1-3-5 because you're going to use 4th finger here, but it's just a habit to me to finger that way. Whichever. Second line, crossover, F sharp A, and then come up. Tricky here, last line there. Here. Slide off. Do the best you can. I can offer other fingerings, but I don't find a fingering that's any easier than this, so you just about try this one. And then reach up, 5-3-2. I like using different fingers on repeated notes. And this same as what we had, but an octave higher. Now, page 49, 3rd line down, last measure. Here, you lift up, they say 2-4. See, that F sharp is not tied. That's not a tie, that's a slur. So you're going to play it again. And they're saying in the last measure, 1-2-1. I never care for this kind of fingering. If you look at the first measure of the next page, page 50, you see it's an arpeggio going up and down. It's here. And this is a standard fingering. You're kind of in this position here with 4th finger on the F sharp, and you're just playing one at a time. But I prefer to maintain this fingering throughout because I can play this arpeggio just wherever. So that's the fingering I would tend to use. So in that last measure, rather than 1-2-1, because you finished here, I'm in position. I don't need to use thumb again, so I would just 2-4. I'm there. So I recommend in that last measure is a 2-4-1, 2-4. Fingering on that. Then in the next page, you're just coming back down here, and the left hand helps you out. And then you can come up. And again on page 50, 3rd line down, same thing. 2-4. I'd keep that fingering. It serves, it doesn't. It's the top note that we want to hear at the bottom. Connect here. That's what we want to hear. Left hand. At the beginning, just broken chords. Keep them soft. I'm just rolling. I'm just kind of transferring weight finger to finger here. Your fingering is fine. I can offer others. I won't. Go ahead. The last measure of 48, you get a treble clef. You're up here. Second line, that nasty looking note, well, let's figure it out. Because when you get this many ledger lines, sometimes it's hard to see how many is that, and you have to count it out. That's where you take your pencil, you figure it out, and you write in the name of the note. That's what I do. So we already know a C is 1 and an A is 2. Those you should just automatically know. And then 3 would be an F, in this case an F sharp. And that has 4, so that's one more. That's a D. So you just take a pencil and write in a D. That's a D. It's an octave. So when the last measure, the first line, you're here, you come down. Now they give you the bass clef back. Isn't that nice of them? Now for this 3rd line here on page 49, the left hand, the fingering they're showing is okay. You can use it. But another fingering you can try is rather than 3-5, do 4-2, then 3-1, and then use the thumb as your pivot and come across 4-2 again, and then 3-1. So it's here. Try that out and see if that works for you. It doesn't work so well with me. I got to shake in my left hand, so it's hard for me to do this anymore. And then down, I would do, if you're going to do that, do a 4-1. So you're in position for 5-2. And then a 4-1 and a 3-1. So I'm connecting. Here, and then lift up. And I would do a 4 on the F sharp because that's the fingering for it. So, and then on top of page 50, it's triplets coming down, but I'll come back to that when I put the hands together. Just get the notes right now. So it's here. And then they're saying 5-3. That's okay. Pivot on the thumb, just come across here. And then down, again a 4-1, 5-2. We've had this before, an octave lower. 4 and a 3. And then in the third line down, the last couple measures there, the pickup to the last measure here. You can do a 5-1 if you want. I prefer, I think, a 4-1 and then a 5-1. It's typical for us to have to do this. So I would do a 4-1, 5-1, 4-1, 3-1. So I'm feeling that. And then at the end, this broken chord coming down, fourth finger on the F sharp. So, because that's the fingering for that chord. I use fourth finger there. Then put the hands together slowly. Now that, bottom of page 48, we're down here. A is tied, so hang on to that into 2 counts in the next measure. Here, here, and then lift up. On the last D, you lift up. So it's... You gotta come up here anyway, so it's okay. Down here. Don't forget the F sharp and the C sharp. Watch out. Here. And then you come down. Okay, just real slowly. This tricky part here on the top, the first measure on page 50. It's 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 1 and 2 and a 3 and a. So up here, the A is tied in the left hand from before. 1 and 2 and a 3 and a. Because the first thing you got to do is get the notes. So it's got to sound like one hand played at all. So, and then when you get the notes, you put it in 1 and 2 and a 3 and a. It gives the illusion of speeding up, of adding a little excitement to it, because we're getting back into this main theme again. And then the third line down, you're here, hang on to the D, now lift up, now here, as connected as you can. Very tricky. You just have to take it slow and easy and gradually speed it up, because you got to get rid of any hesitations you may be having in here. You got to get comfortable enough with it. They don't give you a lot of as far as articulation going. There's some slurs in the right hand. Now, you got to watch it because a lot of times on these slurs, they're not like in the left hand. No, I'd slur all that together. Just all legato here. The slurring will be different in the different hands, and that's what we want. See here, all legato in the left hand. So it's the second line, last two measures. Idea. So for the left hand, for the most part, keep it legato. The slurring is more for the right hand. On page 50, it's the same kind of stuff. Keep it more for the right hand. Now, at the top of page 50, between the first and second measures, they're ending a slur, starting a slur. Connect all that together. Here, if you can, just run it all together. Because in the right hand, you don't have anything, you're lifting up here anyway, but for the here, connect this. See. You see, just run it in the left hand, keep it as legato as you can. Dynamic wise, not a lot of dynamics going on. You can listen to recordings of the actual sonata, you'll get an idea. It's sort of soft. That is the top note of the right hand. When you get to the bottom of the page, you're going to go up to a medium loud. Not a lot of difference between medium soft, medium loud, just a little bit. And that's the top note in the right hand. Keep the left hand soft. It's kind of harder too because the higher up you go on the keyboard, the harder it is to get louder. And now they want this louder and it's higher up. So. And third line down on page 49, you back down to medium soft. And you're staying that pretty much throughout the rest of the piece. However, you never stay at one volume level all the time. You can be centered around that level, but you're going to get a little louder and a little softer from here and there. I mean, the phrases, you might end a phrase a little softer. You might start another phrase a little louder. Who knows? It's up to you and how you feel it. You get to know the music first so you can start feeling it and you're not thinking about notes and rhythms. Then what do you do with the dynamics? How do you feel it? Just stay in that general area, that's all. Now the only pedaling they're offering is at the end. But typically with a Beethoven sonata like this, you might pedal it a little more. Maybe in these early sonatas they wouldn't pedal so much, but typically as the years went on, pedal. See, the pianos back when these things were written were totally different than they are today. So even Beethoven marked a lot of pedaling in his music. Well, for the instruments he had available, you needed it. But for today's instruments, you don't need it. It's different. The instruments back then couldn't sustain a note very long. They didn't have the power. They didn't have a nice cast iron frame, and they were all wood, and they weren't as loud, they weren't as strong. They didn't have, you couldn't sustain them like you can today. So used more pedal to help sustain it more and help the overtones, help it get louder. Today's instruments don't need that so much. However, I'm going to suggest some pedaling in here, but let's keep it fairly simple. Because, I mean, you could play it all without pedal, do it with the fingers, that's nice, but I think with Beethoven you really want to add some overtones and some color to this. And basically I'm going to pedal it with the harmony or maybe with the phrasing. So at the beginning, it's here. I want to connect these D's. I need pedal to do that. I'm going to pedal it with each measure, but I'm changing the pedal after I play the notes, so it's a lag pedaling or an overlap pedaling. And then that third measure, I don't pedal until I play the G, because I don't want to catch both of these. I don't want that. So I'm going to pedal that. And then the last measure, the first line, I don't pedal the last. I want to hear the phrase and I don't need a pedal on the 8th note. So the first line. And here I'm just pedaling each measure. And then the last line there in the third measure, I'm lifting the pedal up with the left hand. This is the same pedaling as before. And at the second line, at the end of the second line on page 49, I lift it up with the hands. It's the end of a phrase here. We want a little silence going on. And here, I kind of run all that together. But when I get to the third measure, I don't push the pedal down until the G. So then put it down. That's to add the overtones, and then lift it up before we go on here and change it. So I'm pedaling the last note beat in that line, but I'm changing it immediately because the harmony changed. So there are different ways of pedaling this one, but that's what I'm suggesting for now. Again, pedal and again. And you don't need to pedal that second measure. So the again. And then on the last measure, try it both ways, with and without pedal, and see what you like better. Listen carefully to the sound. It's a different atmosphere. My tendency when I get this is maybe to leave it out here until I get to the second measure of the page 50. So I would not pedal the first measure. We want that kind of clean. And then pedal this. And then go ahead and pedal these. And then again, we've had this before. And here, you don't really need to pedal that. You can, but I don't know. And then here, pedal, change it, change it, change it. Here, those are just suggestions. You'll have to listen and decide on for yourself how you want to pedal it. My point is, first you'll learn it without pedal, so you can hear it clearly and what the fingers are doing. And then you add pedal and be very conscious of the sound the pedal is making, or the change the pedal is making to the sound. So pedaling is, there's no right or wrong on the pedaling. You just gotta listen carefully and add pedal only when you feel you really need pedal. But with Beethoven I like a lot of overtones in his music. So I tend to use more pedal with Beethoven's music.